Hey everyone. So today we're actually going to open up Photoshop and we are going to learn about the workspace and how you can customize it to suit your needs and some of the tools that you're going to be using. As we go along, we're going to get more in depth on tools and a lot of this stuff. But right now is just kind of a quick overview. So yours probably looks very similar to this. And just a secret, this is not how my workspace looks when I use Photoshop. And we're going to start with this over here. This is your tool palette over on the left, and the default is for it to show up in this long strip of tools, and that's not how I keep mine. I actually hit this little arrow here, and that expands it out into two rows that are just a little bit more compact at the top. I don't know why I like my tool palette to look like this. Probably the first copy of Photoshop I got had it like that, and I just got used to it. But it's how I set mine up, and if you want to change yours, you can do that. Everything about this is customizable to work how you work. So first thing we're going to do is open a new file. So to do that, you click File up here at the top and then New. And that's going to open up this dialog box, and you can see right here under name, it has the default untitled name. We're going to go ahead and change that to Workspace. And now the preset that usually opens is always a custom setting, and what's going to happen is if you've copied something from another program or from a web page, your computer stores that on your clipboard. And when you open Photoshop or open a new document in Photoshop, it automatically defaults the settings to whatever you have on your clipboard currently. It's a nifty feature because if you're copying something into Photoshop, then you don't have to figure out how big it is to figure out what size document you need. It does all that work for you. But we're not pasting anything in right now, so we're going to switch this preset. Now, if you're designing something for print, you're going to want to choose one of these paper settings here. The reason for that is that print settings have a higher resolution. They need to be at 300 dpi or higher, and that's dots per inch. If you're choosing something for, or if you're going to make something for a web page or something that's going to be displayed on a mobile device, you can choose one of these down here. They have a lower resolution that is 72 dpi. The reason for that is that the lower resolution displays just fine on computer monitors or phone screens, and it's a smaller file size, so it will download faster when you're getting it from the internet. So we're going to go ahead and choose just a US paper setting. And you can see there are different sizes that you can choose, but I'm just going to go with a straight 8.5 by 11 inch piece of paper, and my resolution is 300 dpi, so it's all set for print. Now if you are going to print something, you're probably going to want to switch your color mode from RGB to CMYK. The reason is because most printers use CMYK technology to print, whereas computer monitors and things use RGB. So keep that in mind in the future when you're creating your documents. Right now I'm just going to leave it on RGB, which is typically the default for most new documents. And then you can choose your background contents. It can be white, transparent, or whatever your background color that you've selected in Photoshop is, and we'll get to that in a minute. So I'm just going to leave it at the default of white and click OK. And there's my new document, and you can see up the top here it has the name that we named it, Workspace. Now yours probably actually opened up in a tab. When you have tab documents, every time you open a new one, it will have a new tab up here at the top, and that you would have to click through them to see the different documents that you currently have open. I have this feature turned off on my Photoshop, and the reason for that is because when I'm working on multiple things or have multiple sources that I'm putting into an image, I like to kind of have them all set out next to each other so that I can drag from one to another. So I've chosen to disable that feature in Photoshop, and you can do that too if you like by going to Edit and then down to Preferences and Interface. And if you click that, this menu comes up, and right here it says opens documents as tabs. If you uncheck that, it will turn it off and open them as separate documents in your workspace, and then just click OK. You're welcome to leave it as tabs. Again, totally up to you and how you like to work. So we have our document open here. Now, or in our tool palette, you can see there's a black and a white box here. Those are our colors that we're currently using. The one that is on top is your foreground color, and the one that is behind it is your background color. And you can switch between the two just by clicking that arrow. And whatever was your background color will become your foreground color. Now, it doesn't change it in your document, it just changes what your active color that you're using is. So whatever color is on top is the one that whatever tool you're using is going to use. So right now my foreground color is black, but I don't want to color in black. I want to color in something, a color I like. I mean, I like black, but it's not my favorite color. So I'm just going to double click on that, and that brings up this color picker. Now, yours might look very different than mine. It might have a rainbow over here. It might have a rainbow over here. You can just kind of click around to find a color and then use your mouse to decide what color range you want to grab. You can make it brighter or more pastel by using these boxes or the slider here. So choose a color that you like. I'm going to go with this pretty teal and click OK. So now you can see that instead of a black foreground color in our box here, I have a teal. And I'm just going to paint a little doodle. And to do that, I'm going to grab my brush tool up here. Now, if you click and hold on any of these tools, with the exception of the pointer tool up here, it's going to open a palette that shows all the different variations of that tool. So here under the brush tool, we have the brush, of course. We also have a pencil tool, a color replacer, and a mixer brush. Now today we're just going to use the brush, but I do encourage you to check out all of these different tools and see what options are available for you. So grab your brush tool, and now when you grab a tool, up here at the top you have your tool options. So I want to change the size on this. So my brush right now is set at a 75. I'm going to bump that up a little bit. And you can do that if you click this little arrow here. There's a slider, and you can use that to change your brush size just by sliding it around. Or you can go ahead and type right in this box what size brush you want to use. So I'm just going to bump that up to 100 pixels. And then I'm going to come back to my document here, and I'm going to draw a heart. So I just do that by clicking and dragging my brush. And now you can see my pitiful heart, because I will let you in on a secret, and that is that I cannot draw, not at all. I can do lots of things in Photoshop, but drawing is not one of them. So here's my sad little heart, but right now it's just an outline. And you know, I want to fill it in. So I can do that by dragging my brush around and coloring it, but it takes a while and it's messy, and I'm probably going to end up leaving some white spaces. So I don't want to do that. I actually want to make sure that the whole thing is filled and do it in just one step. So I'm going to go ahead and erase what I've done, but oh, well, how do you do that? How do you erase it? Well, we could grab the eraser tool and we could erase it, but that would take just as long as the brushing did. So I'm going to show you a little trick, and that's if you come up here to the Window tab and click. and then go down to where it says History and click on that. It brings up this nifty little window, and on yours it's probably going to put it right there. And you can see everything that I've done since I've opened up this Workspace document. So I can go ahead and just click back to where my heart was finished drawing, but I don't have to go back too far so that I have to redraw my heart. I just click on the one where I want to start over. Now this is a nifty tool to have. It's a thing that you're going to use a lot. So we're going to actually just take this and put it over here in this middle window so that it always stays on our workspace. And that way we always can access it, no problem. And you can see I'm dragging around the tabs here because I want it to be the first one because I'm going to use it a lot. So now that I've gone back, I just made one palette into two, and that's fine. You can just drag them back but as you can see by my errant clicking here, it's your workspace is very customizable, and that's what we want. So, okay, back to my history tab. So now I want to fill this in. So I'm going to show you another tool on how to do that. And I'm going to come down here to my layers function. And now if you don't have this on your screen, you're going to be able to find it by going up here to Windows and clicking Layers. And it'll probably open again right over here, kind of out in the open. Just drag that down into this bottom palette here so that you have it where you can get it easily. Because again, this is another thing that you're going to be using a lot of, because Photoshop allows you to add layers into your projects, and this way when you're working on something that's extremely complicated, it has a whole bunch of different elements on it, you can put them all on separate layers, and by doing so you can edit one element without having to go way back in your history to figure out where you did something, or edit it without affecting everything else that's in that creation that you're making. So we're going to add another layer to this because as you can see, when I drew my heart, I did it right on the background here. So now the white and the blue, the white of the background and the blue of my brush strokes, they're merged together. You can't separate them. To do so, you'd have to paint over it all with white again or something of that sort. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer. To do that, you're going to want to click this little piece of paper down here that's right next to the trash can. And see, that puts a new layer into my document. So I want to make sure that this layer is active by clicking on it. So it's going to be highlighted. Okay. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab my magic wand tool. Now, if you don't see this tool, click on the selection tool that is underneath your arrow here and hold it down. And the magic wand tool is going to be underneath it. Now, it's not on top for me because I barely ever use the quick selection tool. I almost exclusively use the magic wand tool when I'm grabbing for this. So mine is right up on top, but you might have to select it to put it there. So grab my magic wand and I am going to just click in the middle. Oh, sorry, I'm going to select my background layer. I forgot what I was doing here for a moment. So we're going to select the background layer and just click inside the heart. And you can see that it has brought up the selection of dancing ants. Now, it's done something weird here, and yours may do this, it may not. It might just select what's inside of your heart. It depends on what your settings are. But you can see not only has it selected the inside of my heart, but it's also selected the outside as well. It pretty much selected everything white on my canvas. And that's not what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to only select the inside. So I'm going to deselect it, and to do that you hold the Control button down on your computer and hit the D button, and that makes those dancing ants go away. You could also deselect it by going back in your history to where you made a new layer if you wanted. Either way works. So, and then to make my magic wand work the way I want it to, where it's not selecting all of the white, I'm just going to come up here and click the contiguous. And when I do that and click on the inside of my heart, it only selects the inside. If you did want to select all of the white on your document, then you would uncheck that box. So now I have the inside of my heart selected. Up here under the tool menu for the magic wand, there's a spot that is called tolerance. Now, if you only want it to select the white and not select anything that might even have a hint of blue, because anytime you color in Photoshop, it kind of blends it out. It puts a fade on the edges of that color. So if you want to make sure it doesn't get any of those faded bits, you're going to move your tolerance down, and you can do it as low as 0, and it will only select that color that you picked on. If you want it to make sure it gets some of that faded out color, you would bump your tolerance up. I think I had mine set at 40, and I'm not sure if it's selected enough or not. So let's see. So now we're going to go ahead and click on that new layer we made, and then we're going to come over here and we're going to grab the paint bucket tool. And if you click on this and hold it, you'll see there's also a gradient tool, and that might be the one that's displaying on your default settings right now. So if it is, that's the button that you're looking for, and then just come in here and select the paint bucket. And then we're going to, with our new layer selected, we're going to just click on the inside of our little dancing ants here. Okay, and then you can see in one click it is filled in my heart, which is what I wanted it to do. So now we're going to go ahead and hold Control down and hit D again on our keyboard, and oh, you can see that there is a little line around where I filled it in, where when I used that magic wand tool, it didn't select as far into the blue as I wanted it to. So that's not going to work for us because I don't want it to have a line inside. I want it to be all blue. So I'm going to go back in my history to where I've got my selection. Now, you could go back to your magic wand tool and bump your tolerance up, maybe try it at 100 and see if it selects more of that blue to get rid of that white line if you want. But there's another way to do that too, and in this case, for what I'm doing, it's probably a little bit easier. So I'm going to go up here to where it says select and then go down to modify. And you can see that there are a few different things under here that you can do, and we're going to get into all of them later. But right now, I want to make my selection bigger. So I'm going to tell it to expand. And let's expand it by, I don't know, 10 pixels should do. Okay, so you can see it moved out my line where my selection is. So I'm going to go back again and make sure that my layer is selected, not my background. Grab my paint bucket tool again and go ahead and fill it in again. And if I deselect now, it looks like I got it, but sometimes things happen on a pixel level. So I want to zoom in and check, and how do I do that? So to zoom in, I'm going to go up here to Window again, and I am going to find where it says Navigator. Now this is another one of those boxes that you are probably going to want to keep on your workspace. So it's going to open up here. You just grab it by the top. Let's go put it in, nope, not there, right next to our swatches. And again, I'm going to move this tab over because I want it to be the first one in my list. So once I have that, now I can grab the slider here and zoom right in on my heart. And then this red box shows you what you're seeing here on your workspace. So I can click it and drag it around and make sure that my white line is gone. And yep, it sure is. So now that I know that, I can go ahead and zoom back out. and my heart is done. So now let's get back to talking about those layers. So I have my background with the heart I originally drew, and then I have the layer on top of it where I filled it in. Now let's say later on I decided, no, you know what, I want to go back to just the straight outline. I can just turn this layer off and my original artwork underneath it is still there and intact, and anything I put above it is going to still be there and intact as well. So that is the advantage of using layers and working with them. So we're going to be using lots of layers for doing all sorts of different things. Okay, I've got my heart here, and you know, it's sad. It kind of looks like a kindergartner drew it. And that's not really the look I'm going for. So I want a heart that's actually clean, and you know, doesn't look like a toddler made it. So we're going to come over here to our shape tool. Now yours probably is a rectangle. But if you click on it and hold, you'll see the dialog box come up, and there are all different shapes here. There's a rectangle, rounded rectangle, an ellipse, a polygon, a line. We're going for that custom shape tool because I want a heart, not a rectangle or a circle. So we're going to grab the custom shape tool down here, and up in our tool presets, if you where it says shape, hit that little drop down box, you're going to see the Adobe default shapes. It comes with quite a few, and there are different packs that are going to be listed down here that come with your software. You can also download shapes as a resource, and we'll be talking later on about where to get them and using them. But right now the default ones that Adobe comes with are good because you can see right here there is a heart. So I'm going to grab that, and then you can tell Photoshop how you want your heart to be drawn. Unconstrained, you can define exactly the size that you want it to be. You can tell it to draw from the center. The default is that it's going to draw it from the top left corner. So I'm just going to leave it at unconstrained, and come down here. And again, I'm going to add a new layer just by clicking this little white box down here at the bottom so that my heart is on a separate layer from what I've already done. And then I'm just going to click here and drag. And now you can see it's going to let me squish this heart if I want to, or I can drag it out really wide if I want to. If you want to make sure this shape stays exactly the shape it's supposed to be, when you're dragging it out, just hit the shift button and hold it as you're dragging. And now you can see no matter where I move my mouse, it's not letting me smash or stretch this heart. It's looking like a heart is supposed to look. So once I have it about the size I want it to be, I'm just going to unclick, and there's my heart, and it's perfect and filled in and does not look like a 3-year-old drew it. So although I'm pretty sure there are 3-year-olds who can draw better hearts than I can, so that's how you actually get a shape to be the shape that you want it to be. And there are all sorts of different shapes in Photoshop that you can use. So let's go ahead and add a new layer and try one of them out. Let's see, what do we want? Let's do a dog paw. And I'm going to switch colors because I got enough blue on here. So let's go with purple. And we'll come up here and draw this dog paw. And now I'm holding down the shift button because if I let it go, this dog paw is going to get really weird looking and it's not going to look anything like a dog paw. So I'm holding down my shift button and pulling it out, and there we go. That's my dog paw. Oh, but you know what? I wanted to add something to that heart, like an arrow, but oh, I lost my blue color when I decided to do my dog paw, so I need to get that back because I just grabbed a color and I don't remember, you know, what the settings were. So up here is your dropper tool, and if you click on that, again, you see there's all sorts of different tools under here, but the eyedropper is probably the one that you're going to use the most. So you just click on the eyedropper, click on the color that you want, and see, now my blue is back. It's back in my foreground color. So I can go back here down to my layer and, you know, draw a nice arrow through it. There we go. And so this is my masterpiece. Are you guys totally in love with it, right? So I want to save this because let's face it, it is completely awesome. So to save your work, just like this with all the layers so you can go back and edit them later, you're going to go to File and then Save or Save As, depending if you have already saved this once and want to save a different version of it, then you're definitely going to use Save As, but right now we can just use Save. You're going to tell it where to save it. I've got it on my desktop. Now, when you've named your document, when you opened it, that's going to be the default file name for saving it. If you want to change it, you can. You just type in the new one. If you want to maintain the layers that you have in your document so that you can edit them later, you're going to want to save it as a Photoshop PSD file. Now, if you're done with it, you're getting ready to send it to the printer or to upload it online, then you're probably going to want to flatten it, and you can change it into a JPEG, PNG. There's all sorts of different file types, and we'll get into those too as we move along. But so right now we're just going to save it as a PSD to maintain our layers. So you go ahead and save that. Now I know I can close this without losing any of my art here, so I can go ahead and close that. So now we've done some things to our desktop here, our workspace, to make it usable, or more usable for what we're doing. So if we close Photoshop now, you're going to lose those changes. You're going to lose what you've done, the navigator and the history. So I told you earlier that this is not how my workspace looks like, and if you see up here where it says Anne's workspace, that's because I saved my workspace, and to do this little tutorial I reverted back to one of the default workspaces. So now if I click on my workspace, you can see what my workspace actually looks like. I have my navigator up here like I told you, and then next to it I have a color picker, and then in this palette here I have my history, which is my go-to tool. I couldn't live without it. And then I have an action palette, which we'll be getting into that in a little bit too. And then down here the layers and paths. So if you like what the changes that we've made to your workspace right now, adding the navigator and the history, you're going to want to make your own workspace so it saves those settings so that next time you open Photoshop, they'll be there where you want them to be. And then if you choose to get rid of some of these tabs or add new ones for tools that you use the most often, you just go ahead and save it, and it'll always be there every time you open it. So to keep these customizations, you're going to go to Window and Workspace. And then down here where it says New Workspace, you click on it and go ahead and name that. You use your name, you name it something else, you can name it whatever you want, just so long as you remember it. And then it's going to save that for you, and it will actually put a tab up here so that if you switch between workspaces, you can easily find it again, and it will put everything back the way you want it to be. Now, I use a lot of these things, but I don't use them as often as I use these. So I will occasionally pull them up and use them. You'll also see I have a little palette here, and these are my other go-tos. So one is for fonts, which we were talking about yesterday, so that I can change fonts easily. Some are brush presets. You can easily make these as well so that they're easy to get to your go-to ones, just by dragging it right next to your workspace palettes over here. And then when you make those changes, go ahead and save that as your workspace, and they'll stay like that. So that's your introduction to Photoshop, making a file, playing a little bit, and saving a file, and customizing your workspace and saving it as well. If you guys have any questions at all, please ask them in the comments or in the Facebook group, and I will answer the best that I can. But until next time, try out some of those tools, see what they do, and have fun. Talk to you soon.